Yes, we're on.
All right. Thank you for bearing with us. We're still getting our hands around the technology. All right, I'll take it from the top. Welcome, everyone, and good morning. You're back on day three of our series called 25 Days, 25 Skills. Me and Preeti, as passionate educators, got together and got thinking about the skills that are relevant for 2025, that are imperative for every teacher to possess to be able to deliver effectively in whatever phase they are, be it in the primary, pre primary, post primary, higher education, or the middle school, which is the most tricky, right? In today's day and age, it is not just the subject matter expertise, it is not just the particular topic that you're teaching, which is important, but a lot is to be invested in the personality of the teacher per se, in the different hats that they wear throughout their role as an educator. And that's what we've been talking about. We opened this series by talking about the vibe that a teacher has in a classroom setting, the impact that it has on a student in the long term. And now we've come to a place where we are talking about capacity building. The topic that we're going to cover today is the energy with which you teach, the energy that you exude as an educator, and the energy that a student is imbibing in your presence. So, a lot of times we feel communications is something that's only done in with words, with articulation, with the spoken language. But that's not true. There is so much of non-verbal communication that goes into personality building. We're going to talk about all aspects of that. There are three points that we're going to specifically focus on. One is the physical energy of the teacher, the other is the emotional capacity, and last but not the least, the mental package. And it's only the amalgamation of these three that really shapes you into who you are, and that personality that you create for yourself is what inspires the students. So many of us, if we go back to our childhood or even early adulthood, when we were still sitting in those classrooms, would remember a teacher who would just by the charisma of who she or he was, would influence us so much more than the subject matter that he or she was really teaching. And that's what the conversation today is about. That as a teacher, why is it important for you to invest in all these aspects? Coming in from a communications lens, I'm going to talk a lot about the verbal, non-verbal aspect of communicating, of personality development, of the way you uh, look, the way you command a room, the way you facilitate a room. But before we go there, we're going to invite Preeti in to talk a little about the topic and specifically focus about the emotional intelligence, the emotional capacity of a teacher coming from a therapy background, coming from a counseling background. Preeti has a far more richer reservoir of case studies, thoughts, and ideas around that space. And last but not the least, we'll move into the mental faculties conversations. So, Preeti, over to you. I invite you to talk about the initial thoughts on the subject and from an emotional sense, what you think is important.
Thank you, Garima. So, yes, pretty much how a teacher shows up is perhaps what children learn most from. There is a saying, one of the things that I keep repeating in my sessions is children don't learn from what we say and what we advise them to do, but they learn from how we show up and how we deal with our own lives, right? And I think that pretty much is what this particular talk is about, today's topic. And I think many people don't realize that just because we don't talk about our problems or talk about our mental state or talk about the worries that we are carrying, it does not mean that children don't sense that something is off, right? I'm sure even we, when we are talking to our partners, our friends, why even our bosses and managers, there is a sense that okay, today this person seems to be very off, we better walk on eggshells, right? You don't need to know the person's life story or their personal experience or the specifics of their situation, but you do get a certain sense, the vibe that we say, right? We catch on that, and that I think has a huge impact on how children also show up in class. And that is something that we definitely want to talk about today. And I think the first thing that obviously hits the eye is the physical appearance and the physical energy. I think let's start with a conversation around that. Yes. What would you
Absolutely,
say about that,
absolutely.
Garima?
100%. I'm completely with you when it comes to the physicality. See, one thing that's always said in the corporate world is that, even before you get the role, you got to look the part. You got to really dress up for the role, right? And the reason for that is that first impressions are made by in human psychology. There's a lot of study on this, but as much as you may say that you're not a judgmental individual and you do not judge a book by the cover, but the fact remains that you have subconscious knowledge. There is a recorder that's playing in your head. There is a certain bias that every human being is carrying. And in fact, that bias tuned up, down, right, left is what becomes intelligence over a period of time. Your ability to be able to see something, observe something, perceive something, and make sense out of it is what an impression is. And we'll be surprised to know that it takes, it's not a very calculated first impression that we make. It takes us less than 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 at max, half a minute in which you create a perception. Okay, this person looks this way, he or she is dressed this way. Somebody dressed in a traditional attire will be seen as more um, modest versus somebody who's wearing something that's more contemporary or more modern and more Western in their approach, you would see that difference. Why go very far? Let's look at, okay, there's this really popular Bollywood movie Tare Zameen Par, which is talking a lot about teachers, which is talking a lot about education and stuff like that. Anybody who's been in this field would have, by the by, you know, uh, seen that movie. You would always see that a Hindi teacher, the vernacular teacher, is dressed a certain way, whereas the English teacher is dressed a certain way, versus a foreign language teacher is dressed a completely different way, whereas a dance teacher or an art teacher is dressed. It's very popular in even
I never ever crossed my mind to look at it that way. I
yeah,
did not
you
notice this.
Yeah, but a Hindi teacher you would more often than not will see is somebody who is in a juda and a sari and dressed a certain way versus somebody who's teaching theatric arts or something more contemporary is going to be dressed a certain way, right? So physicality is definitely something that matters, and it is not just in a teaching room. See, any room where it's a one to many sort of an energy. What color are you wearing? What fabric are you wearing? How confident are you feeling that way? For example, something as basic as you and me turning out in this Zoom room. There is just a mugshot that's visible. Yet we are very conscious of, how we are grooming ourselves. In fact, because I use a lot of hands, I'm very mindful of uh, how is that going to show on camera, because this is my little window of being seen. And therefore, the physical energy definitely matters. Uh, another thing that we all want to really establish in the early years of schooling is discipline. I come from a missionary school. My school was very particular about uh, if my uniform was ironed or not, if my shoes were polished or not, if my hair were tied a certain way, braided a certain way or not, was I wearing a ribbon on my hair or not. Yeah, these were very small basics. But when we put all of these together, is what gave you a impression of a nicely well dressed, well groomed student. One thing that it signals in the class both ways is that I mean business. I'm here for a purpose. I'm here for something that's serious, right? Same is the case with the body language. We are just talking about the physicality right now, which is about how you dress, how neat are you looking at. I'm not talking about fashion statements here. All I'm saying is that you've got to look the part. You need to be neat, crisp for the role that you're supposed to play in a room,
Absolutely. In
right?
fact, when it comes to dressing, this particularly reminds me of this incident when I started off as a counselor, therapist, and coach. I must have been in my early 20s, right? 23, 24, kind of an age
Mm,
range. And
mm,
at that time, I was working with my mother. And people
mm,
would, call, but my voice was, of course, would sound a lot more mature, than I would look. And, on the phone, when they would call, they would have heard reviews about me, and they want to work with me. They would ask, for an appointment. They would come, they would be seated outside. And when I would step out of my cabin to go around and invite them, okay, you can come in.
right.
He's like, oh, ma'am is ready. Would be the question they would ask. Matlab, I'm some, a receptionist, sort of a role. Like, people can't imagine that. And when they come in, you can immediately see, मतलब ये तो बच्ची है ये क्या करेगी what kind of advice is this one
Mm,
going to, so I would have to spend a good 20 to 30 minutes to establish my credibility
correct,
कि
correct,
my age is not a matter, I can help you.
correct.
And then suddenly I realized, okay, I'm wearing chudidars. It is formal
Mm,
wear, crisp, all of that, but it is still chudidars, which makes me look young. I decided I'm going to wear saris, that too cotton saris.
mm,
Overnight, I tell you, I would walk out and immediately people will stand up. Ma'am, can I come in now? Right?
absolutely,
Just that
absolutely.
visual representation of how we portray ourselves. And 30 seconds is too much. Right? I think it
Yeah.
happens in a matter of
5
nanoseconds.
seconds.
And
Yeah.
it's, how much ever we want to say, we want to raise a non-judgmental world, non-judgmental, create a non-judgmental space. We don't want people to judge others. We don't want to judge others. Don't judge the book by its cover. All of that said and done, it is a very, very, very unconscious thing. That is very beautifully, demonstrated
Mm.
to me through practical experience in that particular
Absolutely,
instance.
absolutely. And I'm so glad that it resonates with you. And not only just the concept resonates with you, but the fact that you know that you have the power to switch it, right?
Yes.
You have the power to create a space where you are going to do something that's going to work in your favor. Because a lot of times people might turn around and say that, why should I change? Why? This
Mm,
is my authentic style, and I do not want to. I'm more comfortable in jeans, and because now even Western wear is acceptable. Early on during our years, and a lot of traditional schools still want teachers to be dressed in Indian attire and stuff like that. But the point is that you got to ask that question: that is this serving me? Is it going to make my life easier? Is it going to just do send off some cues that are going to be right? And like I said, dress for the role. So that's your physicality. And of course, there are a lot of nuances in this, Preeti. Like someday when we unpack it, yeah, from colors to fabrics to cuts to so much that goes into the whole styling piece, but we're not going there today. Coming to verbal conversation, like you rightly said, that even our tone, even our ability to modulate, to articulate, to take pauses confidently, to know that, while I'm facilitating this room, where do I go up? Where do I go down? And, how do I use my voice to be able to keep these people with me, right? I'll give you a very normal example of a flat voice. I can also explain this entire concept to you like a radio broadcaster of Prasar Bharati, where I just do not modulate my tone at all and keep talking to you, right? It's not going to do anything for you. When I am, with my expressions, with my hands, with my gestures, there is so much that goes in very effective storytelling. And as a teacher, you need to be a good narrator. You need to be a good storyteller. You need to be somebody who is able to capture their imagination and just take them on a journey with you. And that's your verbal, non-verbal, physical personality development, which in fact the good news here is as part of teachers training, traditional curriculum also. all of at least these nuances are pretty much a part of it. Now, how much do you execute and excel on in your respective domains is something that you do in your own capacity building. But at least there is a mention of this. At least there is a conversation that's opening up on storytelling, at least in a
Really?
modern day.
Especially with
Yeah,
voice afflictions and stuff, is part of the teacher training?
not not in the traditional curriculum perspective, but there is focus on storytelling and focus on communication at least to begin with. Not for
Of
every. Now you may not find this in a mathematics or a science or a
course.
social sciences sort of a course, but I know for sure that in language courses, in communications per se, there is a mention of all of this. But the fact
But
is that if
don't
you,
you think it should apply to all subjects? Isn't it? Like I can totally like the moment you brought up that voice affliction, dun 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 dun. I could come up with a bunch of teachers and lecturers from my life whose face above the nose would not move. Right? They would
wow,
they would only their mouth is moving. I don't think most people heard what they said.
yeah,
Say
yeah.
nobody heard what they said, right? And
See, because
that is
as human
brilliant.
beings, when something is broadcasted to me at a flat frequency, it's very
Mhm.
easy for me to check out of that conversation.
So now,
Again and again and again, it's important for me to check in and see if you're riding with me or not. It's a
mhm,
very driver and fill-in kind of a journey teaching, right?
mhm.
Especially teaching certain complex concepts. It's very easy for somebody to check out and go in a dream world, la la land, which is far more entertaining,
Absolutely. I
right?
think I did have some really good teachers, and especially for math. I was in love with math, right? And interestingly, I always hated physics and loved math. And thanks to the teachers, now when you're telling me this, I'm totally able to map that to specific teachers who sparked that joy for the subject, right? Or
Mm,
killed the subject for me. And somewhere I still remember in my 10th, we had this particular teacher for science, for physics and chemistry
mm,
specifically. And the way she would explain literally rocket science, like science of how
mm.
rocket moves, the entire class was rapt in attention. I don't think anybody scored less than 60-70% that year.
Mm,
You
mm.
So absolutely, it's not about what subject it is. I think somewhere
That's
the
right.
love of that subject comes through in the way that you narrate or talk about these concepts, and that definitely, you know, brings forward a student's attention or pushes it away, making it easier for them to check out.
Absolutely.
So,
And, before I hand it over to you for taking us through the next part of it, which is emotional intelligence, the fact remains number one, awareness. The good
mm,
point is that increasingly, as we are discussing these themes and topics, there's so much that we are unpacking here that we're building awareness. Number two, these are learnable skills. Yes,
mm,
there are teachers who are instinctively good storytellers, who are
mm,
instinctively more emotive, who are instinctively more humorous, who would
mm,
keep you engaged, whose ability to engage is greater. But these skills are learnable. If you have the right intention, then all of this is doable, learnable. And the best thing is that now, with people like you and me who are working in our individual capacity to build modules around it, with that or in a far more structured, recognized, certified way, there are so many courses out
true,
there that tell you how to do this, provided you have the intention to learn, right? One, the awareness, and second, the intention. So I think
true,
that's what
absolutely.
I talk about, the first aspect of the physical energy, the presence piece.
Now, if we have to talk about the emotional energy, I think it is also an extension of the physical energy. When
Hmm.
we as teachers are drained and fatigued, for example, right? Would you call that physical or mental? Right? It's kind of interconnected. One leads to the
Absolutely.
other, right? When you're mentally drained and fatigued, your body doesn't feel like moving. When you're physically exhausted, your mind will just refuse to think and process. So these two are very much intertwined. Now, for teachers, when they get into a certain monotony, especially for subjects that they've been teaching for years, it's literally the entire year goes in a cycle, right? And somewhere there is a level of exhaustion and you know a fatigue that makes it look like the life is drained out of them. Not to mention the other emotional issues that they could be dealing with, right? Their own personal problems,
True.
their emotional problems, relational problems, pressure from the administration, a whole lot of other things can press down on a teacher, making it very visible in their physical presence and stamina, right?
Absolutely.
And I think it is not just the physical drain, but also the emotional drain, the
Mm.
emotional impact of life and other stressors and pressure that will impact their physical presence as well. Now, yesterday and day before, I think we also spoke about how dealing with children itself, the conflicts that children come up with, that they deal with, and the various others. Like children don't want to listen. They wouldn't have. Some children wouldn't have completed their assignments. Some children are making a lot of mischief in the class. So these are all things also that can become triggers, so to say, and eat away on the teacher's energy. And that
True.
takes away the attention from what they're trying to say into who they are being. Right? Like, who likes to listen to somebody who's always giving lectures and always complaining and always scolding nobody likes that. But if you ask the teacher, they'll say, "But what do I do? I don't understand." Right? They've gone into this mode of frustration and vexation, and it's almost like they're fed up. And
Mm.
when that is the energy that shows up, it takes away the focus from the work that they intend to do.
Yeah.
Right? And when we
Yeah.
said, who has the time, Preeti? You see, you don't have
Uh,
time. The
but
more you don't pay attention to this.
this is taking me back to certain classes where even before the teacher walked in the room, I go, oh, okay. Sometimes it was boredom, but now that the more I understand the psychology behind it, the science behind it, I understand that there's so much of play of mirror neurons, right? I mirror
Mm,
the energy with which to walk in. There were teachers who would just walk in the room and brighten up and lighten up the room, versus there were ones who would like completely suck it out for no fault of theirs. I'm not saying that it's completely just the teacher's responsibility. I'm sure we were also a handful, but you're so right that we get as teachers we could get caught up in 20 other things and miss the point on that one crucial
cue.
um, you know yeah,
Absolutely.
cue, the crucial role that one needs to play. And so, so are there tools, are there ways in which teachers can upskill themselves and in the moment
Absolutely.
work on
So
emotional regulation?
the first thing is to step in with an intention, and the intention is not just get it over with the curriculum, right? The intention could be, I want to have fun today. I want to get the weakest student to engage today. I want to involve the
Wow.
entire
Mm.
class today, right? When we set the intention for the class, that's a great way to set the tone. The intention is not to announce it, well, you could, but just setting the intention in here when you step into the school, right? Okay, what is it that I'm going to do today? What is today going to be about? What's going to be the theme? Can kind of get your mind oriented to a particular direction, right? So that is one thing. Second, if you're finding it hard to cope with your own emotions, to cope with your frustrations, take the time to do that, whether it is during a break, before you step into the school, between classes. Sometimes if you can just take a moment to park, what I like to do is visualize that all of my worries and frustrations and everything that is not related to my class right now is getting collected up as a hat, right? It's a visualization thing. And I take off the hat and I keep it outside the door. And I say, you will stay right here. When I come back out of this classroom, I'm going to take this back on. And I can sit and chew on it and worry on it, etc., etc., once this class is done. But up ke liye, no, it's over. And this, a lot of teachers have said, has really helped them as well. Now, hang your hat before you enter the class, right? So that is one thing I have seen has really helped to keep
Well,
the
so
focus and energy to what is meant to be, what I want to do in the classroom. And so grounding this, and also creating a separation. Many times things that happen in a classroom can get really triggering, right? And in that moment, the kind of snowballing that happens in the head, right? It can
mm,
be very difficult for many teachers to contain that. It helps to create like a shield, a separateness, that
mm,
what the children are doing is them doing it. It is not about me. They're trying to
mm,
express themselves in a certain way. It's probably not helpful, it's probably not something I like, but it's about them, it's not about me. Many teachers go into, what kind of children do I have? Is this how, just like parents say that, no, is this how I
mm,
raised you? To, am I a bad teacher? Do I not know how to control these children? You can't. You can't control children, right? You can't control anybody other than yourself. And I also love another point that you brought in about mirror neurons, right? A lot of times, we, especially when we are going in a negative spiral, think about this in any other relationship also, not just in the classroom, right?
mm,
When we are really upset and
mm,
angry, we say things that hope with the other person, right?
mm,
That's exactly what children do as well, right? A lot of
mm,
times when there are patterns, notice how you're feeling. You're feeling cornered, you're feeling helpless, you're feeling powerless. That's exactly what the child is feeling, and they want you to know how it feels to feel what they feel.
mm,
Just that understanding can really shift the lens from being reactive to responsive in the moment.
mm,
It's not about, it's about them. A child is acting out, take a deep breath. My God, you must be in a really difficult place today. Do you want to step out? Do you want to take a break? Not as a punishment. Go wash your face and come. Maybe you want to go sit in the library for some time. I'll finish this class and come talk to you. Right? To really support the children. And why is this important? Just like when we are frustrated, when we are carrying all of these stresses,
mm.
it's difficult for us to focus.
True.
It's difficult for us to show up in our best version for the
Yeah.
classroom, meaning we are not able to do what we're meant to do, which means if we end up passing on this feeling, children won't be able to do what they're meant to do, which is learning.
Mm, mm,
Right? When you are up in the head and really frustrated, really anxious, really restless, and somebody comes and tell you, come, I will teach you, how to cook a recipe. Matlab, what are you talking, man? It won't even brush past them, right? It's not possible to learn when a child or when anybody is not in a calm state of mind, right? And so to create that calm environment in the class, it's not just, everybody sit straight, finger on, matlab, that that is not calm, right? Just because there is quiet is not calm. Calm is an inner state. Quiet is an external condition, right?
true.
If we can ensure that we are not ruffling the waters, or if we can ensure that we can help to unruffle the waters, quieten the mind, that stillness, I think that will make a huge difference. A lot of schools are now recognizing the importance of bringing in mindfulness moments or
mm,
meditative moments in the classroom, in the school. I've seen many schools who bring in 3 minutes of silence, 3 minutes of meditation, during assembly, right after their
yeah,
prayers and stuff
yeah.
like that.
Mm,
Why not bring it to the classroom?
mm, mm,
That's a great idea too. Why not bring that into your staff rooms
mm, mm,
before you have to really go somewhere? Go for your next classroom, sit
mm,
with 3 minutes of silence.
mm.
That can really help to pull our energies together, and of course to regulate the energy levels in the room as well, right?
Yeah,
And if we're talking about uh, teachers as thought leaders, teachers as leaders in the classroom, can you share some experiences from your life, from your journey in this profession, where you and your energy has helped to regulate the classroom?
yeah, sure. I'll talk about that, but before I do that, I'll assimilate what I learned with what you were talking, Preeti. Some really simple yet profound things. And what I'm realizing increasingly is that uh, even if I'm able to build the vocabulary
Mm,
around this space, I'll be able to realize that how the power lies in me.
mm,
I'll be able to take charge of the situation so much more, right? For any
mm,
teacher who's listening to this, because a lot of times what you keep listening to is that uh, there are too many open loops. There are
mm,
too many modalities. There are too many matrices to be taken care of to be able to conduct a smooth classroom. But
mm,
every time you talk about these themes and subjects, what I realize is that you ask us to turn inwards. And
yes.
just if I regulate this one thing that I have a little control over, right? I'm able to switch to a mental and emotional state where I will be able to command and conduct a room the way I'd like to. And that is the example that I'll bring in as well
Mm,
here. I was addressing a room of 80 counselors in Chennai earlier this year on the theme of counseling as a culture in
mm,
teaching. You know, how it should just become all pervasive, how every teacher must upskill in that space, and how we must create more productive, open, safe spaces for conversations like these. And incidentally, my session was right after lunch. The room was designed in a way where there were two pillars in the
mm,
room, and this was like an open space, and there were two pillars in the room, and both on the right side and the left side I could not see half the room as I was conducting this session. And we were
mm,
supposed to like assume that all, because these are all senior teachers and these are all counselors and because these are middle-aged people, they're going to be serious about the learning that
mm,
we are doing. But you and I, we know better, right? We've been in these rooms, and the session immediately after lunch, right? And I'd been there since morning, and I was pretty sure that I know what this room is going to be like in middle of the afternoon with full bellies. This is
mm,
definitely going to be a room where I'll need a lot of effort to raise the energy. And just because I was very confident of what I was bringing to the table, I was very uh, okay from a physical energy and an emotional energy place, being completely no filter and no judgment and completely stupid childlike, right? So I brought in like a really funny dance to open the room.
mm,
I was like, I know that you guys thought that I'm going to like just stand here and give you a lecture and then go away. But here is a cool technique that I'm going to use, and every teacher is going to, be a student first and do this for me. And this was an adult, proper professional training room. At times,
mm,
I think what also happens with us as teachers, as educators, as trainers is that we carry a lot of bias ourselves. that, oh, we gotta look a certain way, we gotta talk a certain way, we gotta be perceived a certain way. I can't look stupid in front of a room full of educators, and I gotta be serious about my subject. Like you said, it's about parking all of those thoughts which may be external to the room or be a part of that particular session. That's self doubt, that's self questioning. If in a moment I'm able to keep that aside and set the intention that at the end of the day, if if what I'm teaching today is mirror neurons, and if I'm able to show it to them in a demonstrative way, that how a post lunch session can also be fun,
Mm,
provided you are ready to dial down, keep your guard down, and be a child with me once again, we'll be able to prove this in
mm,
some shape and form. And before getting into that session, like you rightly said, I also have a few practices that I executed. I thought of, like, I'll tune into some music and I'll spend some little alone time. I'll touch up my makeup and stuff like that just to feel the energy a certain way, just to be in that mode. I think what also we do is that at times we just discount all of that. And that brings me to the third faculty, which is our mental faculty. You know what happens over a period of time, at least something that I've seen, at least in higher education, is you keep layering up. You keep layering up. Oh, now I've got to be serious. Now I've got to look a certain way. Oh, now I need to conduct this room a certain way. And also your point of taking feedback personally. And at least, for the classes that I teach, if my student is not able to perform well in an interview, if he or she is not able to secure a particular job, because now we've reached a point where it's about livelihoods, where it's about vocational abilities, where about your professional conduct, where it's about the external world that's going to evaluate and judge you. So if a class of 100 students, only 80 get placed and 20 don't, then at times I would stand there and question my own ability in myself. It may serve me, it may not serve me. But the point is that the more our mental faculties grow, we let go of the the physical and emotional pieces is also something that I see, because wo intellect ko na, we let it overshadow everything else. Honestly, one thing that I till date appreciate in the most fun teachers, and you and I, we've been in some of these really amazing rooms with international best sellers and best authors and best trainers globally from the whole personal development space. Everybody is ready to look stupid on the stage. Everybody is happy to dial it down and completely strip down to being absolutely the true self, standing in their desire to serve us when they're on that stage. While it's important for us to build these mental faculties, it's equally crucial for us to keep that child in us alive, that learner in us alive, that student in us alive. Just go and have fun on more often than we allow ourselves to. So as we come almost to the close of this, is there any what I really find you do really well, Preeti, is like you give us really these nice practices over the last 3 days only. If somebody is able to listen to this conversation, very small switches that one is able to execute and they come in handy. So, from a physical, emotional, mental perspective, from a personality perspective, is there any recap of sorts? Is there anything that you want the audience to go with as the closing thought?
That's a great idea. So, physical is, of course, take care of your physical appearance is one, gait, gestures, body language, and of course, your health and fitness. Right? Teaching takes a lot of energy and stamina. Right?
Yes.
We cannot
Yeah.
ignore going for a walk and working out and yoga or any sort of a physical exercise. And that is also something that we model for our children. Emotionally speaking, a regular emotional cleansing also helps. And if I can club E&M, which is emotion and mental, somewhere the more and more we are getting into these conversations, it's becoming very apparent that being a teacher leader is also being a self leader, right? Where you're um, modeling the version that you would like to see in your children.
Absolutely.
right? And that requires a lot of self work, the internal work. That internal work could mean that you go within to understand your own experiences, to see how it has shaped your personality. What parts of your baggage do you want to release? What parts of your baggage are triggering you in the classroom or outside of the classroom? How is that affecting you in the way you show up within the classrooms? I think the more we unpack this, it is also becoming clear that teaching is not just about the subject and the teaching skill, but more so your own personality and how you want to show up and how you connect with your own audience, right? So these are some of the things that are right on top of my mind. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
They're wonderful, and what I'm realizing is that, this is taking us back to our own purposes, right? Anybody who is a teacher today had thought of, had dreamt of impacting their students, their audience a certain way. And that's the reason that they stepped into this profession. What we're really creating as a conversation here is the fact that there is room for that. Uh, there is room for you to grow yourself. There is room for you to impact your class, your audience, your students a certain way. But before you get into that space, it's important for you to pause and look inwards. And even when you're in that journey, it's equally important for you to repetitively keep upskilling as you go along. One thing that I want to reiterate is that there is help available. There are experts available. There is literature available. There is a lot of content that can be consumed. And the more you are a result of what you really consume, right? So, be it audio content, be it video content, be it training modules, there is so much help available today. If you put the intention right, then there's a lot that can be done in this space. And that's exactly what we are trying to do. Like I've been saying, we'd love to hear from our audience on what other themes and topics they want us to cover. In times to come, we're going to talk more about emotional capacity building, mental capacity building, communication styles, leadership, and so much more, right? But if there are more themes and topics that you want us to cover, we'll be happy to do that. With this, we'll close for today. Thank you so much for your time and effort, Preeti. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, looking forward, Karima. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.